Excited to talk about this topic today, team. AI bringing clarity to real customer behavior in a way that enables more accurate targeting. Ton to talk about here. I think the first place where it might be fun to start is what specifically is AI disrupting as it comes to understanding customer behavior and accurate targeting? What's like the status quo that is now about to change? Now that we have AI injected into things like media buying and audience deployment. So Amal or Carrie, I don't know if either of you have any thoughts on that, but I think that might be the best place. Let's just level set on what's about to be disrupted, in a big way by AI.
Yeah, Lou, I think it's a great question. Um, one of the biggest things that AI has been helping across several categories is to better connect data points that lived separately and then make a conclusion in a faster way, right? And so when it comes to customer behavior, propensity to purchase, right, things that a lot of agencies and their clients and advertisers look for when they are implementing digital media buys. Often it felt like a very large act of labor where you had to determine what really was the audience that was truly in market, had the highest propensity, and it could felt like you were stitching together data points from different systems, from different companies, and it was fruitful labor in the sense that you could truly make a difference. But the number of high skill labor that's involved, the number of tools and technologies that you have to have in place, and then the time to execute, is something that made it only for the biggest of agencies, right, with the right amount of budgets. And I think AI has now democratized that so that even if you are an agency that has 10, 20, 50 people, you can now access these things that, really only 5,000 plus people agencies were able to access before.
Super powerful. Carrie, from your experience on the media activation end, any thoughts to add to that about the disruption, democratization?
I would just echo what Amal stated in that it took a lot of manual effort and analysis to make decisions and sometimes lengthy timeframes where now we're able to make quicker, faster pivots or adjustments and with making smarter tactical adjustments in real time.
Nice. One thing too, team, that I was thinking about with this topic is how, interestingly, I think AI can bring a better understanding of humans to things like targeting and media deployment. And the reason for that is I think, Amal, to your point, where the incumbent tech that's usually only accessible to these huge companies with big budgets, there's so much stitching that has to go on. And there are so many assumptions about the customer journey that have to be made when you only have a limited understanding of it. And I think a lot of those assumptions say that the customer journey is linear. We have things like last click attribution that tells us what works. We have things like, standard cookie-based targeting that tells us who's in
Yeah.
market for something. And
Mhm.
then now we're about to enter an age where AI, through that ability, to your point, Amal, to take like an entire data analyst team worth of power, and distill it and make it more accessible, that understanding of the human customer journey, which is nonlinear, which is online and offline and all kinds of different touch points. It's backward, it's forward, it's hills and valleys. I think the ability for AI to enable a better understanding of all of that, both in aggregate and also on the micro individual journey level, I think that is where we really start cooking with fire as an industry, and can start making super smart decisions about the journey.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, especially being able to connect it all the way to any kind of offline transactions and outcomes that aren't your typical add to cart and check out, right? Which, if you're a Shopify store, certainly you have a better chance of connecting all your different data points. But for most of the mid-market that has both online footprint and offline footprint in a single customer transaction, I think this is where you bring all those data points together and you can actually have a better media plan based on thousands of these individual transactions and reverse engineering, what you should actually do. And that's what, everyone always says ad tech is so complex. It's very difficult, hard to use. I think the making ad tech easy and where AI comes into place is essentially taking out all the hard legwork that's required and bringing it into one simpler, easy button.
It's a good point too, and I think that hard work doesn't go away. It's just performed by other systems, in a way that takes the weight off of humans to free them up to do other things. So I think AI, interestingly enough, is going to add a lot of sophisticated simplicity, to our industry overall. Something else, team, that I find fascinating with this topic of how AI is enabling more accurate targeting is I think there's been a long time perception in our industry, and I would love both of your thoughts on this, where if you want reach, you must sacrifice accuracy. So thinking about something like accurate targeting, I think that's almost synonymous with limited reach as our industry has seen it, and thinking about targeting capability and signal and all that good stuff. How can AI change that perception, as you two see it? In the world of AI, are reach and accuracy still at odds, or is there a complementary, approach that traders and marketers can now take, or, is there a different dimension to all this now?
Yeah, I think, Lou, I think in a big way, media buyers still need to understand I'm planning to spend money and I need to understand what kind of impact my investment might make. And there's, components of that impact that are controllable, and there's components of that impact that are not as controllable, right? And I think metrics like reach and accuracy and frequency and all these things that have been around for a decade plus is really about better putting shape around understanding what a media investment actually looks like. I think now finally we're at an age where you can actually forecast outcomes and say, yes, I have some of those other metrics, maybe not the ones that are a little bit outdated, but the ones that add shape. But really, when I'm forecasting a media plan and creating an expectation for my investment, I should really be focused on what kind of outcomes, how many transactions, how many sales, how many windows sold, how many cars sold, am I going to get from a specific campaign I'm planning?
I totally agree. I think that really boiling it down to outcomes and forecast and being able to use forecasted off of data, previous data and audiences that really, informs future buys and really, provides actionable next steps for marketers that they might not have had in the past.
Do you two have any opinions on, I think so democratization is a great theme. Enablement is a great theme. Enabling humans to do a lot more with less, is another powerful theme and works side by side with something like democratization. If either of you were, an agency or a brand and wanted to enable more accurate targeting, with AI, I think to Amal's point, making ad tech easy can actually be a lot of work, to make something complex so easy. But where can anyone start now? I think a lot of this stuff still seems somewhat accessible, measuring with outcomes and using AI and smarter audience targeting. But what does the first steps of that democratization look like to a business owner? Where can they start taking advantage of some of this new platform and technology?
I can jump in. I think understanding your audiences, your first party audiences is definitely key, and utilizing AI to help build more targeted audiences and more utilizing propensity to really inform your next media buy. I think the goal of AI, as we've talked about, is to empower the decision makers with the data in real time at their fingertips. And I think leveraging your first party audiences to really drive those outcomes is probably like the first step in my mind.
Yeah, I think you start with when people get their first party audience and they're excited, they can launch their first campaign, improves outcomes. There's definitely something very exciting about it because it's new. And so I've seen people that start out that way. I think you need software and a platform that essentially gives you a library of first party audiences, right? So I think of it as if you're a hobbyist, you might have one of something, but if as you start becoming a collector, right, you have a number of different editions or a number of edition variations of what you're collecting. Same thing goes for first party audiences. You want to start a library, fill it with your first book, right, and then fill it with a ton of books that are different and diverse and allow you to learn new things, or in this case, allow you to activate and achieve different types of outcomes based on your goal.
Nice. Any thoughts, team, on something like first party data? Can that make some of these other tools out there better? I know third party audiences are a big piece of agency and brand deployment. And thinking about that theme of reach, and AI, I know there's a lot of, partners out there that are working to make things like third party data more efficient. But do we think that AI plus first party data can help galvanize and power up things like third party audiences and things like premium publishers and CTV inventory and all the stuff that we're already used to seeing in our industry and now is evolving with things like protocols, and all that. Is first party data, the trick to making all that work better? Is intelligence and power through AI, or is there more magic, that we need to be thinking about there? All the existing world of ad tech right now and the whole
Yeah.
marketing industry as a whole, we have marketers that are already using things like third-party audiences. They're already activating across CTV and display, and they have publisher partners, and they have reach. They have somewhat understanding of their audiences and things like where their ads are running. And we know first-party data is super powerful. And what I'm wondering is, do either of you have any point of view on how first-party data can make first party data plus AI can make third party data better, and make deployment across a list of publishers better, and make deployment across something like, programmatic CTV better.
Yeah, I think finding those high valued first party audiences and identifying, utilizing, AI in terms of creating almost like a lookalike audience that you can utilize third party and finding similar customers, but also learning and growing your audience because you have your first party solid audience who are brand adopters who believe in your product, but understanding that you can reach additional customers through you learning who your first party clients are, and then enabling AI and also layering on strategic third party segments that will not only influence like positively influence your buy, but also gain more first party data, more first party customers, potentially sway competitors, um, to kind of continue to grow that brand and brand awareness as well as customer base.
So back to the theme, clarity on customer behavior, and think about how AI can lock that. AI can power up understanding of first party audiences and power up usage and application of first party audiences in a way where, customer behavior understanding is supercharged. And there's a halo effect then on other things you do when you're kind of starting from this first party AI powered vantage point where it makes everything else you're doing work a lot better and smarter.